Welcome to Fathered. Fatherlessness is derailing so much around us. It doesn't have to be this way. Join us as we dive into all things fatherlessness, fatherhood, and faith. Fathered is a production of the nonprofit ReWritten. To learn more about ReWritten, you can visit rewritten.org. Let's listen. Hi, everyone. I'm Frank. Welcome to our first episode of Fathered. We are excited to launch this show and to get into all the topics and to have all the guests and to have all the discussions. We believe an honest dialogue around the issue of fatherlessness is a much needed one right now. For our first episode, we went back and forth with who and what we would launch with. And while there were many names and topics being considered, we decided it made sense to start with one of our own. As you know, this show is an extension of ReWritten, a nonprofit providing mentoring support to fatherless youth, an organization I co founded back in 2013 and am currently serving in the role of CEO. Since our founding, we have supported over 500 young people struggling with the burden of an absent father. Today, we are speaking with an alumni of ReWritten, a young man who struggled with the fatherlessness of his life, but in the end found hope and healing in the fatherhood of God. Here is that conversation. All right, RJ, what's up, man? How's it going?
Going great, Frank.
You good? You good?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm doing pretty well.
All right, nice. So let's start off with talking about how we actually know each other. When did we meet, RJ?
And we met 2009
Was
was
it that long
mine.
ago?
Yes.
Yeah, I think yeah, it was 09, 010, somewhere like yeah, because I think you were going to school in Colton, California at
Mhm.
Wilson Elementary, right?
Yeah, I was in the fourth grade.
Man,
I
I
was in
am
the fourth.
old. Okay, yeah, so you were there. So we met you there, and then from there what happened? Like how did we get to know you? Like what were you a part of?
So and the Noble Points where it started as the center was Novaland. That's when Forrest was there. Then you slowly started to come in, and I didn't like you for a bit. Couldn't tell you why at the time, but I think it was one day you told me, it was like, if you go come in with this attitude every day, don't come back. Then the next day we became best friends.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
best friends.
yeah, I remember vaguely. So you must so fourth, fifth grade, what are you, 10? 10, 11?
I was
I don't remember.
nine.
Okay, not okay. Man, that is crazy. Yeah, no, I remember yeah, over so in Colton, California, there's this learning center, which was before Rewritten officially existed, kind of operated as the beginning of Rewritten. But that's where we met you. Yeah, I remember a bit of an attitude, and you did not like me. You're like, "Who's this guy? I don't want to listen to him, but I do want to be here." But something along those lines. And I remember sitting down with you and being like, "Okay, listen, RJ, we're not doing this. Like, if you want to be a punk, you can go be a punk somewhere else," kind of thing. And then you were like, uh, "Okay." And I think you came back the next day, like, and you had gotten rid of your attitude, which was pretty impressive because I think it took several years for most of the kids to get rid of their attitudes. But yeah,
Yeah.
so okay, so tell us about so now we kind of established we've known each other for a very long time. And how old are you now, RJ?
24.
24. Oh my Lord. That is yeah, that's been a long time. Okay, so we know each other. That's how we've met each other. RJ is essentially an alumni of the Rewritten program. And so we've known each other for quite a while. So grew up went to school in Colton is where we met you. But tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Like where you went to school in Colton, but then it didn't kind of end there. Like there was a lot of sort of change and transition. So tell us a little bit about that.
Oh man. So I went to school in Colton, but I came from Long Beach before I went to Colton. So I grew up in Long Beach in the Compton area for a while. Then we moved to the Inland Empire. That's when I started going to Wilson. Then end up going to Terrace Hills. But before I started high school, I moved again. So I've been in a lot of places. I ended up going to Buena Park High School for a year. That was fun. I played sports there. I played football, track, basketball, just everything. I was pretty good, pretty decent. Could have made it all the way.
Nice.
Then I ended up leaving to Corona Centennial. Transferred again. It was just it was time to. My mom wanted me to be around my uncles more. Was having little situations where we didn't we didn't have our own place. We were staying with my cousin, and that started affecting me a little bit. Where I get into it with my mother over little things. So I stayed with my uncle and his two sons when I went to Corona Centennial. I only stayed there a year. Then I moved in with my grandmother. Then I would transfer to San Gorgonio. That's where I ended up graduating from, which, yeah, I did 2 years there, which I
And that's
love.
San G, right? Correct?
Yes.
San G in
San,
San Bernardino, California.
San Bernardino.
Yeah, which is where we are now, which is where is Rewritten is located now. So yeah, so that's kind of a little bit of your schooling and your background. So you kind of touched on it briefly, but yeah, let's talk a little bit more about it. So it's pretty much you and your mom, right,
Yes.
growing up for the most part. Are you your mom's only child, or what would like what's the makeup
Yes.
there?
I'm my mom's only child, but my father has 22 kids, 22. So
Wow.
I'm the third oldest of 22 kids. Yeah, 21, but he got 22 kids.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty wild. So let's yeah, that's I remember you talking about that when we first met. Like it wasn't 22 at that point.
No,
Um, but let's talk about that a little bit. Your father situation. Um, so you didn't grow up with him. He didn't live with you, right? You and your mom.
no,
What
not
what
at
so
all.
what was that like growing up? Like how often did you see him? Did you not see him? What was that like?
Mm. So I didn't see my father too often. I seen it was very sometimesy. Sometimes you get in contact, and other times he has a new phone, but we don't have the new number. So it was is every so often I see my dad, be able to speak to him. Then when I did go with my dad, I'd be with him for a little bit, and I end up at a sibling house or my uncle's house because my dad was doing a lot. So he just dropped me off with my family. So it was a very on and off type of relationship for a long, long time. I
Nice.
knew who he
Really?
was, but I didn't get to have the time I wanted to spend with him.
So you knew his name, but you didn't know him.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So yeah, that's basically what it was.
Okay. Well, yeah. So we that's pretty much. I mean, that's kind of who we work with at ReWritten is a lot of young people whose fathers are primarily absent from their lives. And I know a lot of your story, but I want you to share what you want to share. But um, so with your father, really kind of not like we just said, you knew his name, but you didn't know him. How and what ways did that like impact or affect your life, like emotionally, mentally, practically, all the different things. Like how did that affect your life?
So I can say as a kid, I was jealous of people's who had fathers.
Mm,
Like even the little things, like oh man, I want to go play catch. I don't even play catch. It's just I just do it if I had a dad. Like I could do that, but I didn't, and it made me very emotional. I was angry. I was
mm.
angry. It was I couldn't tell you why I was angry. Just angry all the time. Very very emotional, and it just always felt like I was missing something. Like I didn't. I had my uncles to when I had certain questions of just growing up, but it's not the same as having your own father. Something that's just taught. But I don't see my uncles every day, so I'm asking my mother, and you don't want to tell your mom everything, so you keep a lot of things to yourself. So I end up holding on to a lot of things on my heart, which I can say like now looking back, that would make me so angry because I'm just holding everything in because I had no one to talk to. I had no guidance besides my mom, which she's great, but I didn't have that male role model, that father figure where I'm like, all right, lead me the way, show me how to develop into a man. So it really affected me. It's a lot of bad times, a lot of bad times.
Yeah, I remember, and we'll jump into like, because I'm sure that a lot of this was started when you were very young because you've never lived with your father, correct?
Never.
Not like for a long period of time, not for an extended period of time, right?
Mm-mm. No, not
Y-
at all.
Yeah, and so I'm sure this started as a young kid, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. But I remember you mentioning right now. You just mentioned like dark times, but I remember you writing a lot of poetry when we met you. And I remember some of the poems. They were really great poems. I hope you've held on to some of those. But when you mentioned that, that just reminded me of some of that poetry that read. I remember reading one. I think about snow falling outside of your window. Is that accurate? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So I still have. Yeah. I might be old, but I still got a memory. Um. So let's kind of dive into that a little bit more. You talked about we're not the poetry necessarily, but right now you just talked about how this has impacted you personally, not having your father around, and just things like even playing catch, which you didn't play catch, but if you had a dad, you might play catch with him. If you had a dad around, a father around, how do you think this impacted? And we'll get to like kind of now that you're older and looking back and understanding more. But at the
Mhm.
time, at the time, what did it feel like or look like for your mom, like from your perspective as a kid? Did she struggle? Did she like what did it look like to you or feel like to you?
My mom struggled. She struggled, but she made a way. She was working 16. I can say from the second grade, my mom had to leave me at home by myself. So she had to teach me how to fend for myself. I was cooking on the stove. Nothing too crazy. I like pork chops and but I was making eggs. If I needed to eat, I knew how to cook, so she can go make money. Cause she's a nurse still, but 16-hour shifts. I'm getting up by myself in the morning, getting myself dressed, earning my clothes to go walk to school. So just for her to put food on the table and put a roof over her head, my mom was tired. My mom was tired, but it. I seen it. I seen it. I seen how tired she was, but she she always put a smile on her face. She still made sure I didn't need for nothing, where I didn't have to complain. She knew that I knew that it we didn't have everything, but I just appreciated that like you doing your best.
Yeah. At the time, like, do you remember thinking through or processing? So that's a lot of the practical. Like, she had to work a lot. She had to leave you. She had to teach you how to cook. You had to cook for yourself. Laundry, that kind of things. Those kinds of things. Do you remember thinking about like what it felt like emotionally, mentally for her? Was there ever times that like you kind of sensed that or picked up on that?
Um, honestly, no, I don't think I was there mentally to think that. Like
Yeah, you did.
I was just
Was it?
more of the physical part.
Yeah, like the practical stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting because I think a lot of kids. I remember for me, so I grew up without my father, and I remember for me as a kid, yeah, kind of the same thing, not being aware like the emotional, mental, like spiritual impact that it was having on my mom. But I remembered thinking, like, I remember for the longest time thinking, this is normal. Like, no one has a father at home. Like, this is how everyone lives. And then I would go to school and kids would talk about their fathers, their dads. And I was like, oh, everyone pretends that they have a dad. Like, that's kind of interesting and cool. Like, I did for me as a kid. Um, and so I think for me, I remember thinking, okay, so like we all pretend to have dads, but no one actually has one. And then just kind of like the emotional, mental part of that and seeing my mom working. Um, Yeah, I don't think as a kid I had the capacity like to really process that and think through that, but I knew like I remember I just thought it was normal. Like
Mm.
this is how everyone lived. Did you have kind of similar experience where you're
Yeah.
like this is kind of normal?
Yeah. So my my friends, my current friends, been friends with since I was a kid, since elementary. When they told me they had dads, I was like, "Oh man, I didn't know you had a dad. You have a dad? That is crazy." And they always gave me the funniest look, like, "Why wouldn't I have a dad?" I'm like, dang, I couldn't really respond. Like, I don't know. It's just mostly because I didn't have one. We're in the same type of neighborhood. I'm thinking this a trend that's going on. We don't have fathers. That's why we relate so much. So I honestly didn't think a lot of people have dads. I'm just it was wrong with me back then, just stereotyping everyone, but that was
Well, I think
just
it's
normal.
yeah, it was your experience as a kid, and so you thought it was
Mhm.
normal. So when yeah, it's like yeah, like I was shocked just as much, but then what I would start to do, I think for me at the time, to try to like I don't know if cope with it or deal with it, was I thought they were pretending. So I was like, oh, they're just make believing their fathers, like their fathers don't actually exist. So let me pretend I have one too. So then,
Mhm.
yeah, so that's just kind of the way I would deal with it as a kid. But yeah, no, that's I think we have a lot of like a lot of things in common with that. So so okay, so there's kind of the groundwork in RJ's sort of history and kind of your upbringing and your experience, kind of without a father as a young person. And then we meet RJ. When I say we, rewritten myself, everyone else that's part of the team at the time, um, and some that are still part of the team. But so we meet you, and you kind of have an attitude like we talked about in the beginning, and then you get rid of the attitude, and then we start to get to know RJ, um, and we start to work with you in different ways, from homework things to field trips to mentoring sessions and discussions and stuff like that. What can you what was that like for you? What was that experience like for you becoming part of Rewritten and myself and everyone else coming alongside you in your life?
I can say in this, especially where I come from, I knew I had somewhere to go. I didn't have to be outside because where most people were. So I didn't fall into the gangs, the jail, the drugs. I was going to rewritten. I was going to rewritten, and you always made it for something for me to do there. You made it safe. From building rockets, we had Bible study, gave guitar lessons. I suck at that. Even when it came to the tutoring, when I was horrible at math, you got me a tutor to so I can pass math. Then I can say for you as well, you were the first stable man I have ever met in my life. Consistently, consistent to this day. You was the same. Like you never, even when you're upset with us, but you were still Frankie. You was always available. So I had an attachment to like going to go see Frank. Start bringing food at one point in time. If if we cook dinner, start bringing food. Then meeting like Miss April, Emmanuel, and them being the same, just being consistent with us. It it changed me. I had something to look forward to. I never had something to really look forward to. I look forward to waking up, going to school, and like, all right, I'm going to rewritten, going to rewritten. Like, I don't know, it was an amazing time.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the food. I remember you bringing plates, and your mom. I remember your mom would call or text, be like, Did RJ bring you a plate of dinner? Did you like it, Frankie?" It was always amazing food. But I remember you would bring food. Um, yeah, thank you for sharing that. But I think one of our big things, and we talk a lot about with our supporters and people that come alongside Rewritten, but we talk a lot about how when a father is absent, it creates gaps and voids in a young person's life. And so our mission or what we're trying to do is not replace fathers because there's just no way to do that, but to help fill those gaps and to fill those voids. Um, and so I thought that was, I mean, right now you just shared what I thought was, what I think is powerful is the consistency. When a father's absent, there's a big void as far as consistency and someone being present consistently, regardless of being upset or what might be happening. Um, how do you think? So, you said you have something to look forward to. How do you think that consistency and that place to look forward to, how do you think that transformed your life as a young person and now, like, as a 24-year-old?
That's a good question. It taught me to be consistent in life. Whatever I'm doing, like whatever I'm doing, be consistent at it. Be there, be present. And that's like, even if I don't know that I'm doing it, like, I'm not thinking like I gotta be consistent, but it's more of like it's the second nature. It's like I'm not gonna half do something. If I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it 100%. And it's one thing you did. I'm always gonna bring this up. It's one thing you did. You did tell me one day, and it stuck with me all these years. Being held accountable when I wasn't doing my homework and not making excuses for myself. You'd be like, "What you do today?" I'd be like, "Frank, shoot, I was on Instagram," and you'll pull up my Instagram. You'll be like, "Man, you posted this about 10 minutes ago. How don't you have time? If you can do this, how don't you have time to do other stuff?" And I'm like, "Dang." And it hits me today. Like, if I have time to do anything else, I can do what I need to do. But yeah, just
You could do what's important. Yeah.
I can do what's important. But no, y'all really taught me just to. I'm not trying to jump ahead, but I don't know how to explain it. It's just it's really just second nature of me just seeing what y'all have done and what I am doing now. Just like, dang, I've been real consistent of just being who I am and growing, not
Yeah.
backtrack.
Yeah. So on that note, so I'm kind of like one of the, there's so much to talk about, but I just want to try to stick to a couple things. But
Mhm.
um, so one of the other things we talked about earlier, you mentioned, is kind of always being angry growing up as a kid, and again, we're trying to fill the voids and the gaps, but not by replacing, but ultimately by pointing young people to the fatherhood of God, so that in that and in Him they can find healing and restoration, and they can find peace and rest and comfort and safety and protection, which are many reasons why young people are so angry who don't have a father in the home. They don't feel protected. They don't feel safe. They don't feel loved. They feel some sort of abandonment or neglect. And so that causes them to get angry. And so that said, you mentioned earlier how you were sort of just an angry young person. Like that's how kind of it impacted you and affected you. How did being a part of Rewritten or that time with us, and even maybe up to now, all these years later, did you start to realize as a young person or maybe later that you started to find yourself less angry, maybe finding healing, finding restoration? And how did being a part of Rewritten kind of help establish that foundation for God as your father ultimately?
Um, it was a process of not being angry anymore, but I can say for rewritten, you always mention God in every every sentence, every story. You mention God, and I didn't understand. I was I was against the idea. We had a conversation on the couch before, and it's like, I'm not religious. I just believe in God. And you ask me what I believe in. You believe in Jesus died on the cross, and you start asking me these questions. He was like, "You're Christian." I said, "No," but you always made sure you put God in everything we talked about. And once I started growing up and getting my own relationship with God and starting to go to church, that's when I stopped being angry all the time. I start understanding. I start praying, start fasting. But I can say rewritten, if it weren't for y'all, even though I grew up in the church, I wasn't learning nothing in the church. But y'all made sure that I learned something there. Like I said earlier, with the Bible studies and with you just speaking to me about God. And that's really truly our, it gave me not an idea, but our first father. That's our father, somebody I can count on all the time, all the time. And it starts there. It started there where once I started believing God and saying, I can count on God all the time, that's how rewritten
Yeah,
basically pushed me towards that way. Like, no, like you have a father. You have the father. Look up.
yeah. Look up, look all around. He's everywhere.
It's
Uh,
everywhere.
yeah. So I mean, and that's kind of our heart. Like we're our hope is that like rewritten is an arrow pointing young people to their true father. You know, the creator of everything, but the creator of them. And so, yeah, it's always encouraging to hear when young people, maybe in the moment, because it's you've been there for many of the conversations, not just with you, but with all the
Mm.
different young people. Frankie, you be tripping. You guys you don't know what you're talking about. You guys are crazy. But those are seeds being planted, right? And one day they're going to be watered, and hopefully by God's grace they sprout and they grow, and become very real in their lives. And so, yeah, so where would you say, like, you're only 24. I mean, only, but I also met you when you were 10, so it's crazy to me. But 24 is young, but it's also you're a man now. As far as like healing, I know for me personally, in my 20s, I was still processing a lot about my fatherlessness and the brokenness of that relationship. And so in my 20s, there was a lot of healing, a lot of work being done. Um, where would you say like you are now in terms of just really understanding who God is as Father, and your process of healing and being restored as a young man and as a man?
um, if we can like put a percentage on it,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like 75%.
Nice.
I'm about 75% where it's a lot of things that happened in my 20s where I got to this point where God sat me completely down, where I had nowhere else to look but to Him. And that molded me to start asking myself questions and reflecting on my life. Who is RJ? Who's RJ? And I had a whole journey of finding who I was or who I am. And at that same time, I'm going to church consistently. I got baptized, and I believe February 2022. So God was right next to me on that journey the whole entire time, and me reflecting on my past life and accepting everything that happened. I had to accept and let go and give to God. It's in His hands. It's out of my hands, and that's what I can say. As well as my daughter, I have a daughter, and so looking at her as well, it's like I knew I had to be better so I can lead her in the right direction and not fail her. So this is where I got 75% at, where I'm still on the journey. The journey never ends.
Right. Yeah.
But I feel like I'm 75% in, where my relationship is getting stronger with God. I'm about to be part of the team ministry, which is crazy. So I'm 75% in.
So that said, RJ, like what are maybe one or two things that as a 24-year-old young man that you're still kind of struggling with and working through? You know, off the top of your head, like what's something that as a result of that broken relationship with your father, earthly relationship, like what's maybe one or two things that you're still kind of working through right now that are still a little bit heavy and maybe challenging for you?
How to be a father. How to be a father when you don't have your father, you start grabbing things from the different men that has been in your life and trying to put it all into yourself. So I struggle with I don't I it's some days I don't know. I look at my daughter and be like, man, I don't know. I question myself a lot. I feel like I'm not doing my best. No matter how many people tell me, man, you're a great father, you're great. I feel to this day I still feel like I'm missing something. I don't know. I don't know what I'm missing. I have days that just feel like I'm not doing the best I can do. And that's all
Yeah, and
because I didn't have it.
yeah, so it's hard to when you have nothing to compare it to as far as your own personal direct experience. It's hard to go, okay, wait, Dad, am I doing this right? Because it's like, oh wait, I don't have. But I think that's what's powerful about your story and where you're at right now is that you 75% sure, but you are leaning into God's fatherhood. And so the truth is, even like myself as a father, my son, there's only so much I'm going to be able to share with him and show him and teach him. But I also, for my own son, not just rewritten what we're doing there, but for my own son, I should be an arrow to God's fatherhood, to God the Father in our lives. Do you know what I mean? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's just so I think for me, because hearing you say that, I'm there. I've been there for a while, and I've started to have to like really kind of be intentional and consistent about turning to Scripture, going, okay, God, okay, Father, like how am I supposed to be doing this? Like how do I speak to my daughters? How do I speak to my son? How do I be quick to listen and slow to speak? Teach me how to be patient, how to be kind, how to be loving, how to discipline, how to engage, and how to be uplifting. Um, it's all there, but it takes time, right? It takes consistency, and so. But I think our natural default is to try to go back to what we don't have, or what we thought we had, or what we wanted in our earthly father, right? I think I struggled with that for a long time. It's like, oh man, I don't know what to do here. I wish I had a dad to tell me or to show me, or I wish I had a dad who was an example. And there's obviously I'm a father, so I need to be intentional about how I father. But I think at the same time, there's God the Father, and how are we learning about Him and leaning into that? And I think for me, what I have found the best way to do that is to be consistent and intentional with turning to Scripture and turning to prayer, saying, "God, show me how to do this," which to me sounds like that's what you're doing, and you're in that process.
I have accountability partner. So I call him most of the time and he's a father as well. And I ask for prayer. I ask for prayer a lot. Or I call my pastor, I ask for prayer. Or one of the elders, I ask for prayer. Just I be sometimes I don't know what to pray about, like how to form my prayers. So I ask. And I and when I say they pray, they get the oil, lay it on you, and they pray everything that I'm feeling, everything that I'm trying to get out, and they
Mm,
speak greatness into my life, and I see it immediately. God, when I say I'm one of God's favorite children, I am one of God's favorite children. It has not been a prayer that He has not answered
right,
immediately. Like everything I pray for, it gets answered.
right, and I mean, probably I would say everything you prayed for, but not just that, but what you need. Because I
Yes,
think a lot of
it's nothing
times,
I want.
right? It's a lot of times we pray thinking like this is what we need, but it's like God, you know, like you see, like meet me, you know. But so speaking of all, God and this sort of this greatness of God's fatherhood in your life, and the prayer and the life that you're living now, and all the history with rewritten, and your journey thus far, your process thus far. So you're now on the East Coast. You're over in Virginia, Pennsylvania,
Yeah,
Virginia,
Virginia.
Virginia. And tell us a little bit about what you are doing now and maybe how your time with Rewritten, your time with us, like how it's influenced the work that you are doing now and some of the work that you're about to start doing.
This is gonna make you laugh, but um, I can talk about the work.
Yeah.
I started out so being in Virginia is a lot. Let me just if you're from California, you come to Virginia, it's not the same. It's a lot of trees and it's slower pace. But um, I started off doing like regular security work, like most people, and getting into logistics. Then I ended up working with kids at Youth Challenge Academy. It's like a military based school where they live there for the next 5.5 months. But I ended up leaving because I felt like I couldn't give my full self to the cadets. Everything's so structured and forced, as in they can't be themselves. I got to force structure upon them. And now I work at Next Step Academy, what is an after school program from kids from, I believe, 13 to 18.
Oh
And I'm
man.
like, right? So, and I just started last Tuesday. And I was like, I sat down with myself. I was like, how? How did I get here? And I was like, it was only because of rewritten. I didn't think my path would be working with kids, but the impact rewritten put on my life, put like we said earlier, you laid these seeds in me early on in my life, and they're growing, and it's putting me on a path to do the same thing y'all have done for me. When I see these kids, I be like, man, y'all just need a little bit of guidance. Y'all okay? Whatever you're going through, you just need you need somebody stable. And me putting myself in them in their lives, and I know that I'm concrete. You're gonna get Randall, RJ, however you know me, every single day, and everything I do is intentional. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty wild. That's so now you're gonna start experiencing a bunch of mini RJs and all those different attitudes. Yeah, that's pretty that's kind of wild, and it's kind of a full circle moment where it's like, yeah, same thing for me. I never thought I was gonna grow up and work with young people. And then I met young people like you and this Anthony and Honey and all the other kids. I just thought, man, these kids need some guidance. They need some help. And at the time, I was like, yeah, I'm just a mess. I can't be helping anybody. But God had other plans because if you're willing, He can use whatever you're willing to if you're willing to lay down your life and to do that, God will take it and do something with it. And here we are. You are proof 14 years later that God could take the mess of someone's life, my own, and use it for something good. And now you get to do the same for other young people. That's pretty amazing. We'll have to check in with you in a few months and see how fun it's been and how these kids are, making it real easy for you. How has it
Yeah.
been so far? I know
Uh,
it's only been a little bit of time, but
a lot of personality. These kids have a lot of personality. But it's been great getting to sit down and be able to speak to some of the kids. See, I can say one thing about this generation: they have dreams. I didn't grow up with a lot of people who had dreams. It was a lot of I don't knows. I
oh
don't know.
yeah,
I
yeah.
see when I get there. These kids know. They know what they want to do. It might change when they're 18, 20, but to be 13, 14, 15, and saying you know what you want to do, I love it. Let's go do it.
Yeah, there's some kind of vision, right? Some kind of goal and idea. So that's a little bit easier to work with. It's like, all right, so you got some struggles, you got some challenges, but you have a vision, you have an idea, you have something to aim for. Let's do the hard work now. Which I feel like that's a bigger struggle now too, is the hard work part. I think a lot of kids have ideas and visions and dreams and goals for their life, but you're like, okay, well, it starts with this one nail and this one 2x4. And they're like, oh, I don't want to start there. I just want to go to the, you know, the
Mhm.
end of the vision, the end of the goal. So I think that's kind of one of the bigger challenges now is teaching young people how to start from where they're at and then building from there, and the consistency of that. Nice, RJ. Well, so what all that. So I love what you're doing now. It's pretty exciting and it's pretty amazing and impressive. And I think uh, I think God's going to really use you to really impact the lives of these young people. That said, what's something maybe let's kind of wrap this up with some a little bit of rewritten and then your life and your future. But what do you hope for ReWritten and the future of ReWritten as we continue to work with young people like yourself, the 14-year ago, 10-year-old version of RJ?
I honestly want rewritten to be bigger than what it is because it rewritten is important. Like I don't want it to be overlooked. I want to be to a point where I want y'all to be at a point where y'all opening a rewritten in Virginia, in Minnesota, where it can be global because it really benefits these kids, the youth, next generation. But I'm just praying for that. Y'all go global. You calling me, telling me, hey, yeah, we're opening one out there if you would like to work there. We're opening
Nice.
rewritten.
Good to know. Good to know. We'll have our Virginia chapter run by RJ. Um, so the hope for your life, RJ? What are you hoping for in the next, I don't know, year, 3 years, 5 years? Like what's like big picture? What does
I can
RJ's life look like?
me and God has been talking about that lately, and it's actually planned out. I am a single father, so I'm a single father who's I have a year and a half until I graduate college. So and I'm still in the process of getting my house. I'll be a homeowner next year.
Nice.
So I would say the big picture is just that's my big picture. That's the big picture for me, where I'm graduating. I'm still doing well as a father. Not still doing well, but I'm doing great as a father and becoming a homeowner, leaving my daughter something one day when I do pass away. And getting another job, of course, once I get my degree, see what other doors are open for me to take and grow.
Nice. All right, man. RJ, I think that's all my interrogating I have for you that we have for you. But any final closing thoughts that you'd like to share or
Yeah.
mention?
Listen to Frank. Listen to Frank. Listen to all the board members. Listen to everybody Frank puts in front of you. Everyone has knowledge. They care about you. They genuinely care about you. They're going to invest everything they have into you. Because if I'm looking in the background and I see them boots, boots. Now, for the people who don't know what them boots are, them boots was when I first met Frankie. Frankie wore them boots every single day. They were falling apart. And a minivan that was falling apart too. But Frank will always ask if we need anything. You need some clothes, you hungry. He'll take us to Ross, get us an outfit, take us to Denny's. We couldn't order no juice, water, just water, but you can
That's
get a
funny.
meal. But everyone actually cares. They give the shirt off their back if they can. So invest back into them as they invest into you.
All right, RJ. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Those are some kind words and some generous words. Appreciate that. All right, man. Well, I'm proud of you, praying for you, love you, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about what's happening in the next few months. And we're here if you need anything. Talk to you soon, RJ.
All righty. Love y'all too.
All right. Fathered is a production of the nonprofit ReWritten. To learn more about ReWritten, you can visit rewritten.org.